Anita, how's your mental health?
Questionable at all times. You know this.
Yeah, how's the mental health of your children?
Also a little bit tricky. Can I tell you my experience in trying to find therapists for myself and my kids, Mel?
Yes, please.
Okay, this is how it goes. You ask around your friends and your family for a referral for somebody who's nearby. You finally find somebody who sounds like they might work for your family. You give them a call and you find out that A, they're not accepting new patients, or B, they have a huge wait list. So you start over again and you ask people if they know anybody who would be a good therapist and a good fit. Finally, you find one, you go and you meet with them, and you figure out that you don't actually like them that much. But it's been so much work to find somebody who you can go to in your area that you're kind of stuck with them. Well, do you have any ideas for how to get around this?
I do because guess what? I've actually had some therapists that I have found on my own, which involves what you're saying. Sometimes I remember one time I was like 3 hours in the bathtub on my phone looking
Yeah.
through websites. I was such a prune at the end. But I have also had the experience with working with BetterHelp. And it was like, I don't want to say too good to be true, but because it is true, but it's like amazing because I was matched with my therapist within 24 hours.
And you didn't have to go through all of that other ridiculous process of trying to find somebody. And here's the cool thing too, is if that person didn't work out for you, you can just switch and say, and it's not like you're committing to another years long search for somebody who you're going to jive with.
It's true. And I lucked out, or maybe just BetterHelp is really good at matching people together because I never had to change my therapist. I loved her. Perfect fit for me. And I know that some of our friends have used BetterHelp and they've had to change therapists, and boom, same day, you can change.
Easy peasy.
You can ghost your therapist. Get a new one.
I love this idea. BetterHelp is one of our sponsors. If you use our promo code trybetterhelp.com/WWDN, you get 10% off your first month. And we totally recommend it.
Yes, get some therapy. That's trybetterhelp.com/WWDN. Anita,
Hi.
hi.
Yes.
Hello. How are you?
I'm angry. How are you?
I don't know
We say
yet.
as we laugh.
I'm all the things.
Yeah, okay. It's the week of Thanksgiving. So,
Yeah, American Thanksgiving.
yeah, Thanksgiving to you and Thanksgiving to all the people who are listening who celebrate Thanksgiving this week. Not Thanksgiving to our Canadian friends.
Sorry, no
Sorry.
offense. Though we do love you. My favorite part of Canada was the sound guy. Did I tell you this?
I don't think so.
Oh my gosh, our sound guy, we were just talking because we were like nerdy musicians about sound gear. I was like, so are you Canadian? Yeah. Do you like Canada? Like, because I love Canada. And he's like, you know what? Like, here's what I hate about Canada. Everybody's so nice. Like, your friends are the same nice to you as complete strangers. And I'm just sick of it. I'm like, well, you could move to the States and have like contrast maybe. Like, that was
That's
a weird
hilarious.
answer. Why are you so angry, Anita? Go for it.
Well, I just am angry at my kids. We've talked about, we talk about this every single week, right? Like,
Yes.
I'm just like, why aren't we better at this yet? Why don't you guys understand that? I don't know. And all of the things, it's like, well, you should try this. I need to try this. I need to try this. And I'm like, why do I have to be the one to try everything? Like, why can't they try something? And I realize they're children, but I've been having
Minors.
I've been having a real hard time getting them to school on time, and just like, and bedtime is always the worst. And then I start yelling at them, and then I feel like a horrible human. And I'm like, they're having a hard time too. And this is, and then Thanksgiving, like Thanksgiving was Jason's favorite holiday. And so it comes with sneaky feelings. Like, you don't even realize that that's why you're feeling the way you are. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you're like, why am I so like just bleh? And then you're like, oh yeah, it's because it's the holidays, and the holidays feel different, and it's not cool. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I am. I just
Okay.
feel like I'm going to climb back into bed and hide under the covers for a little while.
I
That's my
support
plan.
you doing that. I think that's a good plan.
And then I'll make some pies.
Yeah.
Because I'm the pie lady.
I'm up at a a ski condo in Park
Hmm.
City.
Yeah.
For those that don't know Utah, that's like 45 minutes away from Salt Lake, or not from Salt Lake, from where we live. But
Yeah.
I have some really nice students and parents, and these happen to be Canadian.
Oh,
And
really?
oh yeah, they're like, we have a condo in Park City and we blocked it out. We usually rent it out, but we blocked the whole week of Thanksgiving out, but we're not going till Wednesday night. So, hey, do you want to just go stay there so you can have an escape for like 3 days since we've blocked it out since Sunday? I'm like, yeah. And it's
Yes.
10 minutes from the skateboard place I go to. So that's
Perfect.
good. My mom's first wedding anniversary without my dad was a couple days ago. So that happened.
Mm.
And
Poor Sylvia.
I know she made his favorite meal. She just like plugs on through. People
Hmm.
ask me how she's doing, and I would say she's doing about what a 70-year-old lady would be like with the things. Like
Yeah.
their coping is a little different than ours. At least like from our kind of demographic, I guess, like our
Uh-huh.
parents, both yours and
Well,
mine
and
are like,
in our community as well, there's definitely a certain way that you go through things, right? It's like you work hard, you have faith, like you do all of these things that we're supposed to, in quotes, do in
you
our
put your
like in our
shoulder to the wheel, push. I'm like, yeah, right. Break that
yeah.
wheel. Go away. Leave me alone. Put me in the cart. Yeah, and it's interesting because people will ask me how she's doing, or they'll come visit her, and I'm like, well, how did it go? And they're like, she's forging ahead. She like, is she okay? I'm like, I think she just is this way. They don't show emotion in front of people a lot. So
Yeah.
not like
It's
we do
different.
either, but like, I don't know. So
So
that happened.
this reminds me of a question that has come up in the Widow Wives Club, and it was somebody basically saying, my doctor told me that I needed to take some antidepressants and said I was showing signs of depression. I'm not where I should be at this point in my grief. And of course, everybody was like, what does that even mean? You are exactly where you should be in your grief, even though I am saying the exact same thing. I'm like, I'm not where I should be. But it just opened up a discussion about how medication is not a sign of failure,
I
you
would not
know?
be alive if it were not for medication.
But
No joke.
do you think that your mom would ever take medication?
No.
Yeah. Because in that generation and for a lot of people, it's like medication is a sign that you're weak, that you're not doing enough, and that you have to be helped. And I do not think it's helpful for a doctor or the medical community to frame grief and say you're showing signs of depression, because a lot of the things overlap. It's just like, we just want to give you a little help. We just want to take the edge off. You're doing exactly how you should be doing, like no judgment involved in there.
I always love to refer to your analogy of like, I am climbing this mountain. That doesn't mean I have to do it without shoes.
Yeah.
So, and it's so true. So, yeah, wherever you are, whatever you feel like, whatever's best for you, go for it. Interesting topic about medication. Do you want to hear my little side note of my new medication?
Yeah, of course.
I don't have new antidepressants, but as everyone knows, I have had the shittiest year ever. I would say I would put it up there with the death of Scott. And in some ways harder because there's been betrayal and animosity and like conflicting feelings and horrible things like that. So I was not in a good mental space for most of the year. I mean, I'm still coming out of it, but we didn't change my medication as far as antidepressants. Like I asked my doctor, I'm like, do I need to go up? Like I'm doing all the things. I'm exercising, I'm doing this, I'm helping people, I'm doing self-care. Like there's nothing left for you guys to tell me that I need to do to try. I'm doing it and I'm doing it every day. You're like, okay, well, my therapist is like, you have ADHD, which is true, but I've never had medication for it. So she's like, let's get you on Adderall. I'm like, okay, let's try it. And it's interesting because typically, like I went to the doctor and they're like, now here's what you need to know. It suppresses your appetite. So you're not going to feel like eating. So you need to bring extra food. I'm like, that's really funny because I don't eat anyway. So it can't make it worse. And online, people will say when you have Adderall or like if you have ADHD, does it cut back on your depression and anxiety or something? And people are like, no, no, no. And I was like, but my situation and people with ADHD, it's like you have like 89 strands of thought going all at once. And then you can focus or you're vacillating between all these different stressful thoughts of all 84 strands. So like, how can it not reduce your anxiety? So I was curious to see how I reacted. Guess what's interesting? It has not only reduced the amount of things that my brain thinks about to stress about, it's reduced it down to like 2 things, which is skating and then more skating only. And it took my stress sources down, I guess, the things I was stressing about down. And I realized, well, because I've been so stressed out, that's why I haven't been eating. And my appetite actually came back a little bit. And I was like, what? I have a connection to food, sort of. Like I feel hunger pains. Like I was not feeling hunger pains before at all. 0. For probably, yeah, like 9 months, maybe more.
That's wild.
So it gave me that back because it reduced my stress. And it's also like kind of filled the big hole in my heart chest space. So I like kind of what antidepressants do. I'm already on antidepressants, but it was interesting because so I went back to the doctor and they're like, oh, by the way, you're just a few pounds over being underweight. And if you get to that threshold, like below the threshold, we're going to take these away from you if it doesn't work. I'm like, okay. So like I was eating, I was doing the things and I go to the appointment and they're like, what? You've gained 2 pounds. Nobody does this on Adderall. I'm like, here's why. This is what my source of stress was and da da da. So interesting, right? I never would have thought Adderall would have been helpful in that situation, but like I'm starting to do better and starting to like kind of get a foothold. And also, can I tell you this? I noticed this like after coming back from Toronto, I think that there's something just so important and a whole or an understanding that can't be met by anybody other than widows for certain things. Like, for example, the poor everybody at our table, you guys know who you are, Evelyn and the crew that listened to my story about my whole last year. And to have validation for that, like that sucks. And yeah, you deserve to be mad from widows. Because people that are not widows, I can tell them about like the betrayal stuff. And they're like, yeah, you need to like just stop fixating on it. I'm like, I can't. And also like, why don't you understand how hard that is after already becoming a widow? You're like trying to avoid those things, And so to have some of the widows share their stories where they've experienced similar things, or just to listen to me and be like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine going through that after a dead husband or a dead partner. I think it did something permanent in a good way to me, because now I've noticed as I've been back from that the community and the validation from people that are like me, it's helped me to like kind of close that loop in my mind. It's like, you're just being crazy, Mel, like get over it. Like it's been long enough.
So I've decided, Mel, that you're just like backwards of everybody else.
Really?
Yeah. Like the Adderall makes you want to eat. And you're like, I like talked about it. And then, well, that's not opposite, but, and then it like is helping you to close that, like by being maybe like feeling like you were oversharing, like it helped you to like kind of close that off. Which, is maybe not backwards, but
because sometimes like I'm just like, why do you guys all not widows, but why do you all normal people don't understand that after you've already lost a partner and it's somebody that close to you, that things after that are harder. Like you don't want to put yourself in a situation when it's going to be abusive, and it's like 10 times harder. I don't know. So thank you to those friends for all that. And I noticed that I am starting to do better and I'm functioning better. And I'm not only in survival mode, which is weird. Because it's November and it's taken from January 1st to November. I've had 2 days where I felt good, which is a victory. And that sounds horrible. Like for me, it's been a victory. I can't believe it. Like 2 full days. They weren't in a row, but yeah.
Mel, you told me a really rad story. Do you want to share that this week with our people about, we call this synchronized swimming, Mel and I do. It's more about like the synchronicity in the universe, but
I love this because you can't even contrive of these things in your mind. Yeah. And then they happen and you're like, holy crap, this is amazing. Yes. So I hope this is okay to share because I'm sharing it. So I go and I skate at this place in Park City. And last week I got there on Monday and there was a little girl there by herself. Well, not by herself. Her mom was working there. It was her mom's first day. And so all the kids do homeschooling. And I found out that they move around the country and they live an awesome adventure life and they're super fun. So this little girl was there and she didn't know how to skateboard, but she had a skateboard. I'm like, do you skateboard? She's like, no. So I taught her to do some things. And anyway, and then like I left and waved by, like met the mom for like 2 seconds and whatever. Then I come back, I think it was the next day or the day after, and the little girl is still there. And she's like, yeah, my mom's working again today. And so like, we're here today and like, I'm going to go ski and I'm going to do skateboarding and I'm going to scooter. Cause like, this is like an adventure, indoor and outdoor adventure park. Right. So, anyway, so it's a cool place. At the end, so this time the little girl, she was scootering. And I took a video and I was like, oh, I need to remember to not be a creeper. Like I should probably ask the mom for permission first. So after we got done, I was like,
note to self, don't be creeper.
I know. I forget that I'm like not a teenager myself. And Lara knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, Lara from Canada. So I'm about to leave and the mom's there and I was like, hey, I promise I'm not a creeper. I hope this was okay. If not, I'll totally delete it. But the little girl's name is Isla. Isla did her first jump off of a ledge on her scooter and I videoed it in case you wanted it to keep for yourself. She's like, no, that's awesome. You can do whatever you want. And so we talked a little bit and found out that we both left New York at the same time during the pandemic. That's when they became like nomad kind of awesome adventurers. And somehow we ended up getting on the widow topic. And I didn't, I don't want to traumatize people. Like, here's my whole story, but I just mentioned it and mentioned the podcast and then left. Okay. So I had her number because I sent her the picture. So that night I get home and I get a text from her and she's like, I'm not sure how this is going to land with you because I don't really know you, but I was telling my very best friend on FaceTime tonight that this girl with blue hair that's a widow is helping Isla. And she's like, and the friend is like, wait, is it Mel Shore? And she's like, yeah. And it turns out that the mom is best friends with one of our widow wives people. Hi,
Isn't
Sarah.
That crazy.
Yeah. From like all the way across the country. So there was like this triangulation between like the nomadic friend that is now in Utah for a season. I meet her in this random way and she's best friends with our people. So shout out to Sarah. And I love the story of those things because it's like the mom's text to me said, just if you're ever questioning on if what you do is helping people, you need to know that it is and that it reaches really far. And remember last week in our initial like blah blah, we were like, guys, thanks so much for telling us those things. So here it is like a week later and there's that crazy story. So thank you, universe. Thank you, Sarah, Isla's mom. It's just wild.
The Academy. I'd like to thank the Academy. That's wild. I think that's so cool. So can we talk about Thanksgiving a little bit?
Go.
So Thanksgiving time is when you are supposed to be thankful for things, right? And a lot of our people in our group and people in grief have a really hard time with that, right? being told that you should be grateful for things when you really have a hard time feeling grateful for anything. So we just want to give you a little support and let you know that it's okay if you can't find things that you're grateful for this year. It doesn't mean that you're ungrateful. It means you're going through a really hard time. And if you do want to try to find things that you're grateful for, totally up to you. You don't need to do that. You don't have to do that, but sometimes it is helpful. Just focus on the things that you are actually grateful for, not the things that you're supposed to be grateful for. And those things can be different sometimes. I mean, we all have a huge laundry list of things that we should be grateful for, right? And we know it in our brain, but sometimes our heart doesn't feel that. So just want to give you that little nudge of support and let you know that it's okay if you're thankful that you're like nail clippers or work well, and that's like the only thing that you can think of, or that you have a comfortable bed. Whatever it is, if you want to try and find things to be grateful for, totally cool. If you don't, also totally cool. We support you either way, and we hope your Thanksgiving will be okay.
And if you need to not attend family functions and people give you guilt over it, screw that. Do you?
You do you.
Yeah.
You might miss out on the cranberry sauce or whatever. We had Zooms while we were in Canada, and we missed them because we were in Canada at Camp Widow, but we just want to thank the people who helped facilitate those this time.
Thank you to Des and Berkeley. We are so grateful for you. Thank you for helping us out, and the widows.
We have a special guest for the Patreon shout out today.
And just a reminder, Patreon helps us keep the podcast going and also helps us to have the funds to help more widows. So if you are inclined to join, please do. It's patreon.com/WWDN. And there are 4 different tiers. Go check it out. It's also in our app if you need to go check that out there because you can't find it. And yeah, one of the perks is a shout out in episode. And I love when Anita's children do it. So yes, we're going to hear from the oldest, number 1 today.
Yes. And just another note before we go into the Patreon shout out. In the Widow Wives Club, our private Facebook group, we are starting some holiday activities to have a little bit of support during the December holidays. So go hop on there. We have a gift exchange going on, a card exchange going on, and we are also doing an Adopt a Widow. If you want to donate money for widows who need a little extra help this holiday season, you can find that all in the announcements in the Widow Wives Club. All right, yes. Here we go.
All right, it's inevitable, you guys. Number 4's done the Patreon shout out. Number 3's done the Patreon shout out. Number 2's done the Patreon shout out. And so it's only inevitable that it's number 1's turn. This is my daughter. She's going to be helping us today. Let's see how she does with these names.
I'm so excited.
Okay. The first one you have to sing a song for.
Okay.
We usually make up a song that has the word widow in it.
Okay.
Sometimes we assume that unless we had a huge life insurance payout, we don't really need to know anything about investments or even finances. But guess what? A little knowledge of finances is critical for all of us. Maybe your partner was in charge of that stuff, and now you find yourself making all the decisions. Maybe you're mad about that. Maybe I am. Nicole from the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast is here to help. She tackles financial literacy by telling the stories of women and widows and finance experts, and shares the lessons they've learned as certified financial planners. Whether you know a lot and feel confident in your financial decisions or feel unsure about all of that stuff, there is more to learn. Listen and subscribe to the He's Gone But the Money's Not podcast on all podcast platforms. This ad was paid for by Rockhouse Financial, an SEC-registered investment advisor.
Widows are cool. Widows are hot.
Okay, good job.
Thank you so much to Constance Bell Dahlbeck, David, Dawn Satterwhite, Emily Weisenberg, are we allowed to say that? Evelyn Flores, Gail Bell, Heather Mullins, Ivan Misner, Kat, Krista Waite, Maya Glasser, Neil Hooper, Rebecca Zyba, Sam Finlayson, Amber Elena Vela, Amy Hartman Martell, Amy Neal, Ashley Hahn, Barbara Schneeberger, Brandy Younger, Brittany Pedro, Chris Steffen, Cindy Wilkerson, Danielle Catterberg, Deborah Nylek.
We call her Not a Debbie Downer.
Not a Debbie Downer. Okay. Thank you, Not a Debbie Downer. Dennis Brozo, Jean Marie Macy, Jen O'Brien, Jenny Taylor, Jennifer Beal, Jennifer Brown, Jenny Wang, Jesse Johnson, Carol Scholes, Kelly Ford, Kirsten Stromberg, sorry, Laura Aguirre Penner, Lauren Old, Lisa Hardman Powell, Lou Clausen, Marie Hoffman, Mary Catherine Anderson, Meg Murto, Patricia Weist, Rachel Barbosa, Sarah Morris, Simone Fu, Sunshine Haven, Sylvia Shore, Taylor Snyder, Karen Cornejo, Amy Burke, Ann Drennan, Anna Tracy, Audrey Henniger, Christina Scambato, Christine Anderson, Cindy Reinad, Connie Remich, Dawn Barber, Debbie Fells, Deborah Westwood, Diana Becker, Doris Reichel, Eileen Stevens-Dem, Emily Toledo, Eric Vandermeulen, Erin Posick, Gabe Lozano, Gia Benoit, Gina Haas, Ian Sini, Ileana Bell, Jackie Coyle, Jane, Jennifer Davis.
We have a secret patron in there.
Yes, and a secret patron. Jenny Armstrong, Jenny Barrow, Jocelyn Milo, Johnny Walker, Julie Stevenson, Karen Ochoa, Karina Jacobo, Kathy Murray, Katie Goetz, Katie Radcliffe, Carrie
Cara
Scara, Kevin Ferry, Chris Morgan, Laura Keeley, Lindsay Konopka, Marjorie Lewis, Marianne Hammond, Marianne McDonald, Mary McGowan, Megan Montague, Melissa Bowers, Melissa Hancock, Naomi Brown, Rebecca Olmacher, Robin Flom, Stacy Stewart, Saywert. Sorry. Tammy Terravest, Tara Wallace, Trenton Thompson,
Judy Malkin,
Valerie Packer, and Wendy.
We got to give Wendy a name.
Oh, yes. Existential Crisis Duck Wendy.
That's perfect. Thank you to everybody who supports us on Patreon. We could not do it without you. Thank you, number one, for helping us with the patron shout out today.
Sorry if I butchered your names.
If you'd like to join our Patreon, go to patreon.com/WWDN. If you would not like to do that, you can buy us a taco at buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww. And if neither of those things work for you, then you can just give us a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It really helps for people to be able to find us when they need us. Thank you so much, and let's do this, shall we?
Yes.
Mel, how excited are you for right now?
So excited because there are so many similarities between two of us on the screen.
Do you remember was it Sesame Street, the one of these things is not like the other?
Mm-hmm.
It's me.
Yep, it's you. It is you. Here are some clues.
Oh, yeah.
We have teal hair. And then behind us both, we have some electric basses and musical gear. So there you go. There's your clue.
We would love to welcome our guest today. This is Neil Hooper, right?
That's Neil Hooper, indeed. Neil. Don't misspell it. There you go.
Neil, is Neil short for something?
No,
Are you just Neil?
It's not. I haven't seen any contractions of it. It's, I believe, a Scottish origin name, and I'm flatteringly told when I do research, my machines tell me that it means champion. Yeah, not bad. Yeah.
Wow.
My husband had a great grandpa, and his name was Cornelius, and he went by Neil.
He didn't go by Corny then, no.
I just wondered if you were like a fancy Cornelius or just a normal Neil.
I wish I were. Maybe I'm a fancy Unicornelius. I know that would be good.
Neil, where are you recording from today?
I'm recording from a small town called Merlin, which is at the very top end of the Rogue Valley, which is in southern Oregon. Probably best known for Ashland, the Ashland Shakespeare Festival, Jacksonville, the Brit Music Festival. So yeah, I guess I'm about an hour north of the California border, which means I get the Northern California climate, not the Portland climate, which, to be honest, I may as well move back to Britain if I was going to enjoy that.
Speaking of that, let's figure that out. How did you get to the States? What's the deal? Why are you here?
Okay, I'll keep it brief. And it's a sweeping statement, but it kind of feels true to me. I will try to keep it brief. I'm not always good at that, so you'll have to rein me in, ladies. Cecily and I decided that we were kind of getting a bit bored with Britain. I had started 10 years before we ever thought we'd move over here. I'd started working for the European subsidiaries of American Silicon Valley companies. The first time I landed in Santa Clara, I thought, wow, this is familiar. And it felt like I'd been accidentally beamed up by aliens from Santa Clara and had been accidentally beamed back through a bureaucratic mix-up somewhere, shades of Hitchhiker's Guide, right? So I was beamed back down to somewhere in Britain, but I never quite belonged. A little bit too much of a rebel. And I just said to my CEO once, one of the CEOs, I said to him, we had this really good idea the other day. And he said, oh, how did it go? Some promotion or something. I said, how did it go? And I said, we didn't do it. And he was appalled. He said, why didn't you do it? And I said, because I couldn't prove that it would be successful. His jaw dropped and he said, you should have done it just to see what you found out so you could then maybe do it successfully later. And, that was an epiphany for me. It's like, this is the can-do culture rather than the, oh, I'm not sure you should do that culture. And I know, which I felt more comfortable in. 10 years later, my company was prepared to transfer me, the one I was working for. And on December the 18th, which is actually a very significant date for several things. And I think that will come out during this broadcast. It's a very significant date. In 1995, we got off a Virgin Atlantic jet with no return ticket. That was pretty wild.
So in England, the whole situation is don't do something because you might screw it up. But in America, you're saying it's like, figure it out. And then if it fails, like, try again next time. Is that what you're saying?
A very sweeping statement. There are exceptions like Richard Branson and so on, and there are dynamic pockets of creativity and business risk taking. But being risk averse is more, I'd say, the business culture. And yeah, absolutely.
Can we talk about creative culture though? Because how many killer, amazing, original British rock bands are there? So many.
Oh my God, it's extraordinary. But I still do feel that Britain re-exported American blues. People like the Stones, that they took it, got hungry for it, translated it, brought it back in a morphed manner. And I think that's true of a lot of music. There's been a lot of cross-semination, but there is something about Britain that just, it rocks, and it's fresh and clean and it's beautiful and it is innovative. So yeah, I'll take credit for that. I'll take complete personal credit for that.
So Neil, you and Cecily were already married and together when you moved here. Do you want to tell us, back up a little bit and tell us how you and Cecily became Neil and Cecily?
Yes, we did. And we met at a party. My best friend's birthday party, September the 7th, 1979. I mean, I know the date, but that's the meet-iversary. We celebrated all kinds of anniversaries. So she was a vision in spandex on the other side of the kitchen, and we were both. I was 26, she was 27, and we were immediately tongue-tied like teenagers. And we didn't know, didn't know what to say to each other, what conversation we could have. We just knew it was just eyes across the room. It was just a beautiful moment, and we never looked back from that. Well, it took us a while to get together. We had our friends sort of trying to throw us together because they got it, they knew it, and of course we knew it, but had no idea what to do. At 26 and 27, we're acting like 16-year-olds, with crushes. And so that was the meet-iversary, and there was the touch-iversary. That's one of the great thresholds. And we couldn't, we didn't know quite how to touch each other. And we were sitting in a pub, it must have been a couple of months later or something like that. And one of our friends picked her up and stuck her on my lap and said, for quack's sake, get on with it. I'll do your quacks if I remember, okay? Yeah. So, and that was it. And then, of course, there's I'd like to say there's the Shag-iversary. I don't remember. Don't remember the date, but I remember it. That's all I'll say about that. And then of course all the other anniversaries, the move-in anniversary, horrible little seedy flat, but it's your first love nest. And then we bought a house in London. We actually bought it from Bob Geldof. Would you believe? He wasn't there. It's all done through his lawyers. Bob Geldof for Boomtown Rats, right, and Live Aid fame. So that was kind of cool. And I know Starstruck, Big Eyes, all the rest of it. So we had to clear out a lot of old pictures of Paula Yates and things like that. If you're not into British rock of the time, this is probably irrelevant. But that was kind of cool. Then there's the wedding anniversary, of course, the classic one, which incredibly, at one of the celebrations of life, I forgot to mention that anniversary. You think that's the biggest one, but it's like, why did we get married? We don't know. It's just we felt, it was going to happen. And then we had run out of cigarettes and we didn't have enough wine, and we couldn't do it, couldn't propose jointly unless we had cigarettes and wine. So I remember us knowing where we were going with the conversation. We beetled off round to the corner store, got some cigarettes and wine, came back, and then proposed. And that was just like, I still don't know why, but didn't change any dynamics, but it was okay to have done it. It was lovely to have done it. So, and we were rebels enough that we made it ours. We paid for the whole thing ourselves, had it at home and in a registry office. We're not religious, and we didn't want anybody there that we didn't felt belonged there. So we didn't want, Aunt Clarissa that smells funny that you have to invite because, that sort of stuff, right? And this is a theme about controlling things that I've seen on the podcasts and also the sites. It's usually related to celebrations of life and things like that, where other people take control. And even though that early on, we didn't want anybody else to have control over us or what we did. So we held the party at home. So simple and had it catered. And then, so that's how we met. And then the other anniversaries, the Arrive-iversary. Then there was the, I suppose, there was the Oregon anniversary, which is when we decided to move from the Bay Area because we couldn't afford it anymore to Oregon. So there's the Oregon anniversary. And then there's the Gary-versary, which is when we bought the house on Gary Lane. We're running out of prefixes here, you see. So so that's how we got together, basically. And the thing is, over 42 years, I always say, using the British polite word, people say, how long were you together? And I say 37 years married, 5 years shagging before that. So 42, do the math, which is the answer to life, universe, and everything, according to the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I kind of like that.
I love that your review of getting married was all right.
Well, yeah, the thing was, it's something that it was right to do it. I think partly because we were thinking of starting a family, and it seemed easier, even though we kept our own names. In fact, we were so rebellious, I wanted to take Cecily's name just to really upset people.
Yes, Neil.
Well, yeah, it's because there were no more Hatchets in the world. That was her last name, and there's plenty of Hoopers. We were sprogging all over the place. We were way fecund. So that was something we wanted to do. It was easier to just keep our own names in the end, and we were never successful in having children. We tried IVF, we tried everything. We looked at adopting out of Russia and places like that was kind of happening at the time. So long story short, she did have an ectopic pregnancy at one stage. Fortunately, it was diagnosed earlier, but that was game over for children, which left us as a childless couple, and actually very happy. So I don't know how you guys do it, Anita. How can you be so selfless, and especially with 4? You must really have liked it. So.
If anyone could see Anita's reaction just now, it was the best eye roll ever.
Oh, really? I do not know how I don't know how anybody does it. But I mean, my hat's off to you. I guess you become some gene changes, and suddenly you will do anything, and suddenly you can do anything. I just don't think I could. I was so used to
You'd
being
be surprised.
Yeah.
At what you can do when you're forced to do it, which is like the theme of all of widowhood, right? Like we can't imagine doing something until we're doing it, and we're like, well, this is just what we're doing because this is what it is. This is the position we're in. You have kind of alluded to the fact that you and Cecily are free spirits, and it's always been that way, right? You're trying to go kind of against convention and do your own thing and be your own and be your own masters. I was curious about that because I wondered if that came later for you guys, or if it's always been that way.
I think we started out that way, and I think we lost it at one stage, to be honest. We actually became more British, strangely. Now, a possibly relevant backdrop is that Cecily was actually American. She was just raised in Europe. She was the smallest thing ever to come out of Dallas. Five foot four, and I'm 6'4". Well, you're the same height lying down, which I thought was a little bit racy at the time. But exactly, that's right. And I thought, okay, well, that's fair enough. But yeah, so she was an American passport holder, and I wasn't. So it's strange. She came over with me here, but I knew so much more about America. How do you pump gas? How do ATMs work? Because I've been coming over on business. We did discover a family connection down here, though, which is great, which is down in Los Angeles. A whole load of cousins of various degrees of removal, different ages, and they're all second cousins of Cecily's. And the beautiful thing is that since Cecily's death, that they were worried I'd lose touch with them, and I was worried they'd lose touch with me because Ceci was the bond. And it's just so lovely. We both sort of danced around the subject, and it was obvious that I love them to death, and they love me to death. So I have family. That's one of the gifts that Cecily gave me.
So Neil, will you tell us about why Cecily is no longer with us? What happened?
It was lung cancer, which she got in 2014. So she was a breast cancer survivor from a 2014 diagnosis, which ran through for 12, 18 months. Lumpectomy, nothing more radical than that, never needed chemo, it was radiation and so on. So she got off easily in terms of consequences, but not psychologically. She would be the first to say she didn't handle it well, because she was frightened, she was scared. There were points when she said, "Oh, just tell them to cut them both off and then it won't be a problem ever again." And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. She was very frightened. She knew it. She was scared. And it was in October 2019 that she was diagnosed with lung cancer, which came from just accidentally spotting a shadow when they were checking her for, breast cancer, just the annual checkup. And that was a different deal because we know that's a one-way trip, however it goes. And it's, okay, how do you manage it and how long do you manage it for? But her reaction was very different then, because she knew that she had suffered, real like mental, intellectual trauma from the breast cancer. And she was determined not to let that happen this time. Although obviously to begin with, it was, yes, very upsetting. But her reaction this time was to realized that she'd been here. She knew how to manage it better this time. She got in touch with a wonderful foundation called the Go To Lung Foundation, which is a fantastic resource for people. She became an ambassador for them, lobbying Congress, Senate, calling up these guys' offices to raise awareness, to raise funds. She got media trained. She was mentoring other people locally and not locally, who were entering that fear space. So she could say, look, I know, I understand, I get it, I've been there, but here's actually how it works, and here's how you can feel better. She had previously done suicide crisis lines in Britain. Oh, what a woman. I mean, just amazing. She threw herself into that. So, and sometimes she was better than others, but the lung cancer, it jogged along. She exhausted every possible treatment, had some horrible side effects which went away when she stopped certain treatments. Basically, she exhausted all the treatments she could reasonably have, and the thing seemed to be pretty much holding its own. It's just like hold a washing brief and hope that there are some new clinical trials that she can get into for a new wonder drug. None of that ever quite panned out, and it was jogging along okay. Until December the 18th, that magic day in last year, 21. So we always went out to celebrate the anniversary when we got off the jet. And I took her into one of our favorite restaurants. And, she was having a not completely great day, but, she had strong days and not strong days. But if you were sitting in a bar with her, you'd never know that she actually had that condition. And before my eyes, she crumbled. Walking in, she chose her drink, had her martini or whatever it was, and all the people around, she's looking at them engaged. She's ordered food, she started eating it. And within 20 minutes or something, she could barely raise the glass. She couldn't quite find her mouth with it. She could hardly hold the fork. If she could get mashed potato on it, it would fall off before she got it to her mouth. And she was staring around like she didn't know what planet she was on. And it was, I didn't know what was going on. I thought it was super stress. I'd been told that she could have like traumatic episodes like that. She knew as well, through the stress of no longer knowing what her survival plan or whatever it was. So hopped across the road and took her home. And the next morning, half of her side didn't work. She couldn't really talk. She wasn't making any sense, except she could understand stuff. And I thought, oh my God, stroke. So straight down to ER. And, it's one of those awful good news, bad news things where, they quickly ruled out cardiovascular. And they said, that's the good news. But the bad news is we did a CT scan and there's a growth in the brain. So it had metastasized to the brain. This is the first piece of me learning dark humor, which is where I went. And that was that she hadn't had any food all day. And, here's someone who can't work a spoon, a fork, a button or anything, right? But they brought her some food. Someone who can't hold a fork, they brought her spaghetti. Yay!
Oh, come on.
I
That's
know.
just mean.
I know, you see, but honestly, I that was the first laugh that I had out of this whole thing. And I've had a zillion opportunities to see the humorous side. If you just step aside from the tragedy of it all, there's so much irony and dark humor. I was sitting outside. That's where I could escape and be on the phone to my friends. Anywhere in the world, there's always someone up that you can talk to. And boy, did I need that. And it was wonderful. And I was just looking down the deck, which runs the front of the house, and it looked like a bowling alley. And I thought, that's interesting, because I was thinking, oh my God, on top of everything else. And I looked down that alley, and it looked like a road, and it looked like a path. And this gets very visual and very allegorical. But it was exactly that. And I looked at it and I thought, that's a road. And, that's my road. In fact, that is my future, is down that road. And it's, there is nothing else, is this situation with Cecily. And I love that girl so much that suddenly it was like, wow, I can dedicate myself to giving her the best departure possible, making it as beautiful in every way. And in that moment, it went from being something that was crushing me, something where I had to say, this is awful, but thousands of people are going through this. So pull up your big boy panties. If they can do it, you can. And that switched to being, I couldn't wait for her to ring the bell so that I could go do something for her. And suddenly it went from being onerous to being an absolute joy. I'm truly one of the most rich, one of the most beautiful times of my life and our life. But I don't know what in my brain enabled me to switch that, but that saved my sanity.
For me, as a sudden deather, it's so easy to think, oh, well, first of all, people that had an illness, their person died of an illness, they had time with them, but also how excruciating to watch your person die and to, go through that and grieve the different things as time goes on. And I'm glad that you were able to have your mindset get to that point, because for me, when I hear of my friends that are widowed that had a long-term illness or even a short-term illness, I'm just like, I don't even know if I could do that, because what's coming. So what a gift. That just like makes my little widowed, cold, dead heart sort of warmish, or teal maybe.
I was so fortunate with that mindset, but I'm very clear that there is this not divide, but there's this one fundamental difference between having been to a camp widow, having been to sitting with 400 other people that are in various stages, had different experiences, which is an incredible place. Camp Widow is extraordinary. But I'm aware there are the traumatic loss, and there's, I don't know what you'd call it, the you have some runway loss. There was a period of time about 4 weeks into, 4 or 6 weeks in, where the effects of the radiation had worn off. The monster had largely gone away. She could walk around without the wheelchair or anything, and didn't need pads or anything like that. Still couldn't quite make sense of remote controls or the phone. It's like she was convinced they didn't work because it was which controller should do what. And when you get two menus down in the iPhone, it's like, where the heck are you, sort of thing. And I swear those remotes and things, they got more air miles than I have, because you would throw them across the room and say, it doesn't work. I actually bought her a new iPhone 6 weeks before she died, knowing that her old one worked, but she was convinced it didn't. So we took her out and we bought a new one, and she was very happy. So, but those are the things you do that's what I mean about crash landing, and doing a gentle descent and so on. Yes.
I think there's room, and you can tell me if you think I'm right, but I think a lot of people in your situation are able to see the honor that it is to take care of their person, but also it's torture, and it can be at the same time. You can feel such love for somebody, and you have to feel such love for somebody, because I don't think you do those things unless you really love somebody. Like you're saying, death is not pretty, it's not clean, it's very messy, and it can strengthen the bond that you have, and it can also pull apart the bond at the exact same time, which I think is something that a lot of non-grievers can't really understand, how it can be so dual at the same time, how it can be both of those things at once, 1,000 things at once. And we talk about what seeds we water are the seeds that are going to grow. And so if you can water those seeds of honor and maybe try and steer away from those seeds of feeling tortured, maybe that's helpful. Maybe it's not. I don't know. I haven't been in that situation, so I can't really,
Well, that's this thing. I mean, you both suffered traumatic loss, which is like, that must be horrific. And so I shan't dwell on that with you, because I'm sure you, as of course, you know a lot more about than I do. But yeah, it is very trying. I mean, if it hadn't been turned into such a beautiful thing where I can see the beauty of even the awful thing that's happened, when she suddenly can't get to the bathroom on her own again, that's horrible, but that does mean that you then get to take her to the bathroom, and that's a beautiful thing. So it's very bittersweet. What it was, Anita, was exhausting.
Yeah.
That's the thing. So no matter how much you're motivated to it, how much you so value and adore that it's an opportunity for you to do that, no matter how much that, it's still actually just draining. No getting around that, however much you love it, however much you like it. I was just getting quite drained.
Well, I just was going to say, Neil, that I happen to know that Cecily had awesome hair because you showed me a picture. Can you tell us about that?
Oh, this is again one of the gifts, but also it's one of my irreverent love things, which again, you taught me. I had already done it, but you legitimized it. The story here is, so I play a bit of music, and I felt she dyed her hair ginger, red, green, teal, purple, everything under the sun. And she would reinvent herself all the time. And I came home once with some blue sides. She did not like it. She was not happy. She thought I'd embarrass her in public. A bit like, I'm 68, right? So the idea of like a 68-year-old in Speedos, she said it was like, it's like, trying to be something you're not. I mean, like, okay, that's fine in the Mediterranean because you look kind of odd in baggies there because everybody's wearing Speedos. But no, she thought it was just a little bit too pretentious and didn't like it. But of course, darling face, my darling, you're not here to stop me now, but I will always wear your colors. And that's the thing. And that's how, listeners, this is how Mel and I bonded. I went to Camp Widow. I walked in there. Number one, musicians can sniff each other out. It's just like one of those things, okay. But also then we looked at them. We were both wearing very closely colored dyed hair, which was like an immediate bond. So that was cool. So that broke the ice. But yeah, but the content of the discussion was about the kinds of, get over the preciousness of it, which isn't for everyone, but it really, really does help normalize it. And I've used that with friends to normalize it for them as well. I've got a couple of examples of that, but please go. Go.
I just want to say, first of all, I think there are no rules in life anyway. Like I just saw on Instagram Paul McCartney doing a headstand. And how old is he? Like 80. So whatever. You wear the Speedo. But also, here is my Camp Widow story and Neil and I bonding. I remember we were in San Diego and we were giving the talk and I was like, what in the world? There is somebody there with hair like mine. And at the time I was in my blue period, but with teal strands moving towards a teal period. And so I was like, you've got to be kidding. There's some guy in here that has the exact teal that I am going towards. So then after, I think you came up to us after, and then you said, oh, look, we're hair sisters or something. And I was like, I love this guy. He's the best. And then, then we found out, I mean, through our presentation, of course, like people knew I was a musician. And so I was like dying that you played the bass and all these things. And what struck me, in addition to those things, was that you were only 11 weeks out from Cecily's passing. And I remember that. And you were talking to us and explaining how a lot of the things helped to validify what you were feeling. And is that a word?
No, but I love it.
I would say validate, being properly educated, but I can't help that.
That's like a widow brain word, right? Validify. Guys, it's going to be in the dictionary next year. Validate. Sorry, everyone. There's my traumatic brain injuries talking. But the other thing too is we were like, well, it's so not good to, you know how this goes. It's good and not good to hear stories of how far people are out from the death, because it's so easy. Like Anita and I'm going to be coming up on 5 years. She's going to be coming up on 4-ish at sometime soon-ish. And 11 weeks is fresh. First of all, props to you for even being able to go to Camp Widow. I couldn't imagine getting myself out of bed to go to something like that. And when we spoke to you, we were like, we want to hear your story, and like, would you want to talk to us? And I remember that you looked super taken aback. Like, why would anybody want to hear from me? I don't know anything. But you have been in the freshness of grief, the part that a lot of us, like, we forget some of those nooks and crannies as we continue to move through time. And so everybody's story is important, and it doesn't matter if you were 11 weeks out or 11 years out. So I want to ask you now, I don't know how many months it is at this point. How long has Cecily been gone?
6 months and 1 day.
Okay, that's still super fresh. I would love for you to tell us and the listeners kind of what your experience has been in that fresh state. First of all, how did you even get to Camp Widow and know about it in that amount of time? And then how did you have bandwidth to go? And then what's it been like being in the first 6 months? Tell us.
A hell of a journey, incredible growth, and I actually think I can be very proud of the way that I've navigated my way, and partly the way of others as well. One thing that one forgets, I know it's all about us, but there are friends grieving as well. You can't just assume that nobody else is hurt or hurting. And I realized the more I could normalize things for them and get them less awkward about it, that would make it less awkward for me. They wouldn't be dancing around me. I wouldn't be dancing around them. So being quite direct by saying died rather than passed, being direct, that also makes it very real for me. How's it been for me? Number one, I'm 6 months down the line. That sounds like very little time, but I actually think that I'm much further down whatever passage I was going to than other people who may be taking the same passage would be in the same time. I mean, I know people that have been bereaved for 3 years that still haven't opened their husband's room's door. Now, every time I was moving between the rooms, I moved some clothes, and that meant very early on I was touching her possessions, normalizing that, knowing that they were there, something like that. It was very clear to me. Her hospital bed, which is in the same room as our king bed, was removed the day that she died, obviously. And there I am in this king bed. That's too big for one person. But how soon when is too soon to get rid of the bed? Never too soon. I wasn't exorcising a ghost. I needed a queen bed. So my buddy who was with me, we went out and I got a queen bed. In like 3 days. And it was like, okay, this is good, because this is already moving forward, and that's not moving on, it's not moving away from it, but I'm taking so much with me of Cecily and our experience and our knowledge. But the transition domestically also helped transition in my head, because the surroundings changed. Those old prompts weren't there. I had my own bedding to my own taste all of a sudden, and I was insulated by the fact that I had good people with me. And here's a tip that I really do want to pass on to everyone. That I got lucky. A friend, I said to someone quite close to the end, I don't really know how to ask Cecily whom she wants with her at the end. And that wise friend said, it's whom you want with you. It won't make any difference to her, not really. Because as long as you're there, it's whom do you want with you? And I thought, okay, that's good to know. So I guess she dies and I ring someone up that I've already got on the deck, and they come up the next day, and so on and so forth. And I thought that's how it worked until the Wednesday before she died, when I knew it was coming close. And I was sitting at some lights ready to turn left because I still need to get, my crown fixed and the rest of it. Home help was there looking after her. Um, and I heard this strange noise. The Wookiee in Star Wars. Goes, oh, that's how he talks, right? And I heard this noise at the lights, yeah. So I wound down the windows thinking, oh, is this a new type of farty exhaust that people will have, the young things? Or is somebody on a weird station? Or is this some new musical genre that I should pretend to like so that I can be super pretentious amongst the young people? And I couldn't find the sound outside. And guys, it was me. I was making the noise and tears were streaming down my face and I had no idea. And it was just like I suddenly realized I couldn't do this alone. And that's when I got smart and I rang up. There were two people I had identified that I could be a puddle, I could be obnoxious, I could be whatever, and it wouldn't matter to them or me. And I rang them up and funny as usual, I'm trying to control everything because I think I have to fix everything because I think everybody else isn't going to get it or not do it my way. And I spoke to them both separately. I was trying to coordinate them. And one of them said, Neil, just give me the other person's phone number and we'll work it out, which they did. And essentially one of them came down the very next day and was there through Ceci's passing. Death. Sorry. I'm still. There's also the thing about the plural and the tense as well, which I think there's another T-shirt in that if we get to that. So she came down. But this was the thing: have someone with you, but pre-qualify them, have them on board to be that person that you can be a puddle in front of, and have them there at the end, because it just made such a difference to me.
I'm just curious because for some people, objects are very hard to get rid of. And there's no judgment either way. If you want to keep, there's people who's have their person's toothbrush for years and years and years, and it's still sitting there. And it's not a sign that people aren't moving on or aren't grieving in the correct way. But I'm just curious if objects and possessions, if they have ever held a lot of importance in your life, or if you guys, it was always just like that's an object that they own, but it doesn't really mean much. Is that kind of how you've lived your life, or was that something that is kind of new after she died?
I don't think things are that important, but there are still certain pieces of jewelry like that her mother had that she used to like to keep. Yeah, I think we used to see things as kind of sacred objects because they used to be, someone's something or other, relatives. My father's war medals, for instance. That's a classic. I mean, you got those for participating. He was never in action. It was like, that's for showing up sort of thing. But they're still my father's war medals. So on paper, they should mean something, but actually they don't. And that test where you hold something in your hand, you say, does this bring me joy? And if it doesn't bring you joy, or if it doesn't have utility, then lose it without guilt. And losing guilt was the most important thing for me to do, ladies. I lost guilt. That's one of the reasons that I was able to come to Camp Widow, because when it's too soon, it's never too soon unless it's too soon for you. When is anything too soon? Like getting rid of the bed, like moving the handing off the clothes. We weren't ones for shrines. So I think it might have been more difficult for me earlier, but no, and I just enjoyed touching her scarf, remembering when she wore that jacket and so on. And yes, I'd have a lovely cry over it. And so it's so critical to embrace sadness rather than avoid it. This journey of mine, it is like, imagine you get into one of those old-fashioned railroad compartments where you're stuck with whoever's in there because there's no corridor, right? Or the stagecoach might be better. So you get in and, you're stuck in this thing for however many miles. And so you're stuck with these people in there. Who's in there? There's joy, there's laughter, and there's sadness. Those are the three other passengers, okay? So joy is just something you can feel every day. Laughter is like visceral, moments of high. And those are both ladies, because I just associate that as being sort of feminine, joyful. The sadness, though, is a guy. He's a little overweight. He's pretty miserable. He's got, resting, not happy face. I'm easy for me to enjoy the other folks. I kind of know them anyway, just conceptually. But the sadness guy kind of intrigues me. So I start talking to him, getting to know him. And he's got a lot going for him. He's an essential third member. He's actually very comforting, in a sort of downer way, but sometimes you want to be downer. You've got a companion and he calms you in a way. And I think I see a lot of people who are avoiding any hint of sadness. They go off and find something to do to be busy in the hope that they'll have joy and laughter again. My guy's always going to be there. And the sooner you embrace him and actually say, actually, I feel like having a sad day. And I will have a sad day consciously and say, hey, sadness, come, be with me. I want to be contemplative and I actually want to be sad. And it's okay because then it's not a horrible thing. You don't have it in a strange way. It doesn't sadden you because it's part of the fabric.
Neil, have you seen the movie Inside Out?
I don't think so, but I think I now have to.
Yeah, it's your assignment. It's a Disney or it's a Pixar movie, and the whole premise is it's the emotions in this little girl's brain, and this is kind of a spoiler, but throughout the whole thing, you think that joy is going to be the solution to the problem, and it turns out that sadness is the solution to the problem. And I think kids should watch that show. I think it's really powerful to show us that all emotions are actually good and necessary and can help teach us things. It's not just the happy ones that we get to have, that we want to have with us all the time, because we can't. That's not how life is. So that's your assignment, is to watch Inside Out.
Yeah, actually, I remember the trailer for it now, and it fascinated me at the time.
Yeah.
Personify it, give it a name, and then you can relate to it, because I love the Irish don't say, or my Irish friends don't say, I am sad, as if I'm defined by sadness. They say, the sadness is upon me. It's a third-party thing. It's affecting you. You're having a relationship with it. It's not you. It's not defining you. It's not inside you. Can I give you the story of Cecily's hilarious last 5 words?
Yes, I was just going to say. So let's have the story, the hilarious death story. How is that a thing?
Oh God, this better be. I know. Well, I hope I haven't oversold it. Well, you've got the idea that Ceci was, she took no prisoners like me. She did her own. If she was angry about something, you knew she was angry. You could not tell her what to do. You couldn't manage her. And that was great. That was beautiful. And she kept me honest about not being managed as well. So she could be a firebrand in the most wonderful way. So on her last day, the hospice comes in to do the daily visit and draws us to one side and says, okay, you're really, really close now. It's going to be today, tomorrow, maybe the day after, but that's all you've got now. So I and my friends go popping down the road because the home help is there. We think, okay, well, we'll take this window of opportunity and we'll go down the road and we'll just get some fixings for lunch, chicken salad, all that kind of stuff, just bits and pieces, just a few minutes down the road. On the way back, I thought, well, we're passing the post office. And the mail, the post office is like 3 minutes from home. It's no more than that. So I thought, well, I haven't picked up the mail for how long? And mail happens. So I just pop in with my friends there to just pick up the mail. It takes moments, 3 minutes from home. Flash over, cut to at home. Hospice nurse is gone, but the home help is still there. She's very experienced. She's lost people on her watch before. They gave us the really good people at the end. And somehow, Cecily, for 48 hours, she has been fundamentally cadaverous. She's still got her purple hair, just a few wisps of it, because even up to 2 weeks before, we were still taking her out to get her hair dyed, because that was like that was definitely totally futile on one level, but the power of that was it was like a whack you, cancer, you may kill me, but you're never gonna win. And I just, again, it's just, oh God. That spirit was fantastic, and I loved doing it, and so on. Anyway, so there she is, but she's got just a few wisps of dyed hair. Her mouth is kind of fixed in a slightly open O, occasionally moving, but not saying anything that's communicating. Her body, she hasn't taken anything in for days, so there's no need to go anywhere to take it out. And her hands are just lying beside her, and occasionally a finger will twitch. And that's 48 hours she's been like that. She can hear, people do, but so that's been the case. Somehow she conveyed to the home help, I'd like to see Neil. Well, that's going to be the goodbye conversation, which would have been very beautiful had I been there. I wasn't, and she had this prejudice, this conviction that whenever the home help was there, I always used to take that chance to go out and buy shopping. We only had them for like sort of maybe 6 hours a week I was out of the house. But the classic answer was always, oh, where's Neil? Oh, he's out shopping. He'll be back in a minute. That was almost a cliche. And guess what the home help said to Cecily? It was like, oh, he's out shopping. he'll be back in a minute. And if her eyes were already rolled up, but if she'd been able to roll her eyes, she would have, I'm sure, because it's like, what, really? You're kidding me, is what would be in her head. I can't believe she even communicated that. But what comes next is incredible, because somehow she managed to convey to the home help, get my phone, open it. I guess she'd given her the code or something, call Neil and, give it to me. So I'm pulling out of the post office now, and the phone goes on my dashboard, Cecily Hatchett. And I think, okay, this is not happening. This is not possible. There's no possible scenario. But, fortunately, when something's happening, you've got no idea what's going on. There's nothing you can do except go with it until you've got more knowledge that can then know how to use. The alternative is you panic, and in the ocean you die if you panic instead of just wait for further data, right? So that's fortunately how I reacted. So it was like, okay, act normal. So I just answered and I said, hi, darling, I'll be home in a minute. Can I get you anything? And full voice, she said, where the are you? And she hung up, and she drew her last breath probably within moments before we got home. And that is so her. Just incredible. And anybody who knows her just creases. So when I told that at the Celebration of Life down in Half Moon Bay 5 weeks ago, probably, there's 100 people, 85 of whom had not heard the story, but they all knew her. And the moment I said that towards the end, the release of awkwardness and energy and the burden, it was, I could see it just go up through the roof. Everybody was suddenly unburdened, like the sun came out and it'd been monochrome till then, and suddenly it was color and VistaVision or, IMAX or whatever. It just, like, the relief in the room was tangible, and everybody just creased up laughing. I thought that was one of her gifts, because that gift is something that I've been able to give to other people, which makes it okay for them to celebrate her passing rather than, be sad about it and awkward around me.
And I hear that might be some words on her urn. Is that true or false?
So it has the regular plaque on the side, on the front, or just the paper certificate. But I did put out, I made labels with dymo tape or whatever you call it. And so it's got, where the frack are you, also as a diagonal slash across the nice thing at the front. And that sits by the wine rack in front of the coffee machine. So I see it several times a day because I visit both.
I feel like that's such a fitting part of your celebration of life. And also I feel like she gave you a gift that keeps on giving in calling you to ask you where you were and what you were doing. I think it's so great. I just wanted to piggyback off of what Mel said a little bit. When you and Mel were talking at Camp Widow, there was this thought of nobody would want to hear from me because I haven't figured it out yet. And Mel was talking about how, sometimes we're so focused on the ending that we forget that it's a process. And so it's good to find people in different stages of the process, even when you feel like you're a baby in the process and you haven't really figured a lot of stuff out. Like, that's part of the process. And hearing from people in that stage and learning from them is really powerful, even for people who have passed that stage as well. So I just want to say thank you for agreeing to talk to us, even maybe if you felt a little bit like you weren't at a place where you were ready to talk about things or where you had figured it out. Because guess what? Spoiler alert, none of us have figured it out. So yeah. Thank you so much, Neil.
It's been a joy.
I have one question for you, the most important question, Neil. Ready?
Yep.
Drum roll.
Yes, I am.
And it's not what is your favorite band of all time, but I do want to know that. What is your favorite cheese?
My favorite cheese is a good French camembert that's just runny in the middle, like à cœur, as the French say. And you take it on little crispy biscuits and you smear it on, or you drink it with rosé wine on the banks of the Loire. So that's it, camembert.
Okay,
yes.
Now favorite band ever, go.
I have to say Beatles, Stones, yes, and Rush, probably.
Beatles, Stones, Rush?
Yeah, and ABBA. I mean, I'm not kidding. I love perfectly crafted pop.
Beatles are my all-time favorite as well. So we are twins, except for not at all. But
but in many
also
ways.
in so many ways.
Thank you so much, Neil, for joining us. We hope you guys have enjoyed this episode and getting to hear a little bit from Neil and his story. Make sure you check out the Widow Wives Club. It's our Facebook group. Just make sure you answer all the questions so that we can keep it a safe place. If you want to keep the podcast going, check out our Patreon. It's patreon.com/WWDN.
If you'd like to buy us tacos, go to buymeacoffee.com/widowwedonoww.
And until we get to talk to you again, I'm Anita.
I'm Mel.
I'm Neil.
And we are just two young widows and one, where the are you, Neil? And we are all just trying to figure out, widow,
We
Do
now. This is my favorite thing to discuss with you.
Tell me, what is it?
One of my favorite things. I do enjoy tacos and cheese and dogs. This is about how you cannot pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars for a phone plan, especially when you're a widow, your person is dead, you might have kids, you might need another option, and you just want your phone to work, you want unlimited texting and service, and you want it to be like $25 a month.
It blows my mind that they have plans that start at $15 a month. That is so cheap. And the cool thing is it uses other 5G networks. And so you don't have to pay extra for that. And you still get great service.
Yep. Anita and I have traveled all over and I have used my phone. So I highly recommend it. And my mom's even on it. When my dad died, we put his phone down to the cheapest plan, which is $15 a month. And I think my mom's on the $20 a month plan, and it's so worth it. It's so much cheaper than what we were all paying before. So I highly recommend it if you're on a budget or not. Who cares? Ryan Reynolds is in charge of the company, and they send you free stickers with Ryan Reynolds temporary tattoos. It's kind of the best. So if somebody wants to sign up, what can they do, Anita?
Go to trymintmobile.com/WWDN. Seriously, you guys, such a great idea. Save yourself some money.
And if you're worried about losing data or having any changes with your phone, not going to happen. They walk you through it. Everything's fine. It's the easiest process of all time. Again, that's
trymintmobile.com/WWDN.